best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Interesting news out of England yesterday. The Bank of England shredded their records from the crisis era. Why would they do such a thing? I mean, transparency is the hallmark of these advanced democracies. And of course, central banks are transparent, aren't they? Here to talk about it, Miles Franklin's Bill Holter. Bill, welcome back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. How are you, Kerry?
Doing great. So what's the meaning of this? Why would they do such a thing?
Well, I mean, simple logic tells you if they're erasing records and the only record of what happened was a written record, and I wrote about this, the written record is put down or put together by a person, and people are known to change or lie or what have you. But actual audio, and that's what was destroyed, were the audio records. The audio doesn't lie. Whatever they said, they said. And you have to wonder, these records go back, I think they were erased from 2007 on. And that's during the crisis era. So what were they talking about? Were they talking about certain banks that were upside down or insurance companies? Or were they talking about suppressing the gold market? What were they talking about? We don't know, and we won't know.
Yeah, now it could be anything. And I wonder where they're...
From a historical standpoint, the historical standpoint, 50 years from now, we still study today about the Great Depression, which was, 80 years ago. 50 years from now, people are going to want to know what happened. 100 years from now, we want to know what happened throughout that now, currently, and those records they're gone. So obviously, it was to destroy evidence. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and obviously, they weren't looking good, whatever it was they were doing. And you wonder, why would they keep an audio recording in the first place? Didn't they learn from Nixon 40 years ago, the White House tapes? Don't they learn anything?
Well, yeah, you got to wonder why they had them in the first place. But in reality, they should. If you've got governments that are transparent and actually govern for the people, then it should all be transparent. But it's not.
Yeah, well, central banks, when have they ever been transparent? Their job is to really work behind the scenes and work their financial magic, their financial chicanery, and kind of do whatever they feel like it in the name of the public benefit, right?
Absolutely.
But in reality, they're really working at the behest and for the benefit of the major banks.
Well, the major banks and the elite. Go back to what Rothschild said. He doesn't care who gets elected or who's running the government. If he has control over the currency, he has control over everything.
Yep, that's the name of the game. He who prints the money, it's the golden rule, I guess. The one printing the money really has control over everything, and that's what it's been about for the past 100 years. It's amazing that the Federal Reserve made it 100 years.
It does look like they're at the end of their rope. Speaking of the golden rule, I wrote a piece earlier this week because it was speculated that the Ukraine gold, which was 37 or 40 tons or something like that, was flown out in the middle of the night. And I got to thinking, and I went online and I checked. Actually, before I even went online, I thought to myself, now how much gold could an airliner carry? So I figured, let's look at a 747, and I thought they had more than 300, 325 seats, something like that. It turns out they have 400 seats. All you would have to do to equal 40 tons, which is 88,000 pounds, follow this through, is put 200 pounds of gold in each of the 400 seats. So that's saying the average person is 200 pounds. There's 80,000 pounds right there. And then you can take the rest of the bars and just throw them in the storage bins up top.
Mm-hmm.
So to transport 40 tons, You could do it in just a regular passenger 747. You wouldn't even need to have a cargo 747. But they actually, after I checked, they can actually carry 123 tons. That's the rating from Boeing. So why did Germany only get 5 tons? And we're told it's because of logistics, and they can't fly them.
Yeah, doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, 40 tons. 40 tons is nothing, and that's what was supposed. I think it was 42 tons or something like that per year for the 7 years or 8 years to equal to 300 tons. I mean, your most obvious answer is the answer. The Fed doesn't have the gold to give them. That's why they only gave them 5 tons of gold.
Mm-hmm.
They could give them 300 tons if the gold was there in 2 days' time with the same plane. They could fly it from New York to Germany and Germany back and do that 3 times. And they could actually do a total of 370 tons on 3 flights.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, obviously, I remember there was a time when Republic National Bank in New York had like 50 armored cars every Friday lined up, and they were shipping $100 bills to Russia because that was the preferred method of payment when the ruble had crashed. And, right. You know, there was like 3 or 4 747s going to Moscow every Friday filled with $100 bills. So what's the big deal here? You know, what's the logistical problem? I don't get it. Not making sense.
No, not really. Another thing of interest, and it's really gotten no press coverage, is Prince Salman from Saudi Arabia is meeting. The meeting started yesterday and are supposed to finish on Sunday. Meeting with top Chinese officials, including the president of China. And you really have to wonder what they're going to talk about. The first thing that came to my mind was they're going to do some type of a deal where Saudi Arabia hooks onto a long-term oil supply deal, but not in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be really interesting. That would, if something like that were announced, it would be like a light switch on the dollar.
Yeah, petrodollar is dead. If that happens, exactly. The petrodollar is gone in one day. And you know, the largest trading partner of the Middle East right now is the Chinese. Over $300 billion worth of trade per year. They like trading with the Chinese because the Chinese stay out of their business. They're not telling them what to do with the Israelis. They're not telling them what to do with the Libyans or the Iraqis or the Iranians. They just trade with them. So, right. Perfect trading partner, right?
I would say so. Whenever I do business, I want to do business with somebody that doesn't put pressure on me and does it on a handshake. And I perform, they perform. It's a good deal for everybody. But that's typically not the way we've done business around the world. We've pressured nations to do this or to do that, and it really complicates business.
Yeah, and undermines the country's interests in the long run, right?
Right, exactly.
Gunboat diplomacy.
A lot of these deals are one-sided deals.
Yeah.
Look at past deals that have been done over the last 50, 75 years, and many of the deals have been one-sided deals for the U.S. There's a book, I forget now who wrote it, Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Oh, yes.
Really interesting book. How the U.S. would go down into South and Central America and give them credit to build electrical power stations because they were still somewhat in the dark ages and just didn't have power supply or lines or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And they were done at interest rates that could never be paid.
Right.
So that they would always be beholden to the IMF or the U.S. or whoever was extending the credit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a perfect example right there.
Yeah, that was by John Perkins, and
that's right, John Perkins.
Yeah, seemed very true. Book seemed to definitely ring true. I think the Chinese are doing much the same. What they do is they go into these places in Africa where there's tariffs on all sorts of goods, and they build a project, a dam, a mine, or whatever. And the deal is they can import unlimited amounts of goods in support of that project, which they do, and then they go and sell all these goods on the open market with no tariffs or anything else, and they avoid that country's tariffs. So,
well, I saw that firsthand in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
The infrastructure in Costa Rica was horrible, and China came in and they built bridges, and they need bridges down there because it's so mountainous. They built a bunch of bridges, and they actually built the national soccer stadium. So, China went in, built all kinds of stuff, and big partner with Costa Rica now. Costa Rica is not big for China. China is a big partner for Costa Rica.
And more of this up next on the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. We got Bill Holter of Miles Franklin.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Urgent alert. Ex-Secret Service agent claims it's worse than people know. One of Obama's former Secret Service agents recently smelled a rat. What he discovered inside our government was so devastating, he only saw one option. He quit. What's worse, he fears what he found could affect your job, your neighborhood, and most importantly, your family, very soon. It's worse than people know, he said in a recent interview, and I'm not trying to scare you either. We too share his concerns. This is why we've devoted the better part of 3 years collecting solutions for nearly all problems created by intrusive governments, and we've succeeded. Go to hiddensecrets1.info to check out all the details. Our panel of insiders have devised a legal but sneaky set of solutions to help you reclaim your privacy from the NSA, opt out of Obamacare, and make a bundle from little-known investments and small business opportunities. Simply visit hiddensecrets1.info. That's hiddensecrets1.info. Do you have Medicare or health insurance through your employer? If so, listen up. The healthcare reform wasn't written to save the healthcare industry or even to lower healthcare costs. Shoot, it isn't even designed to insure the uninsured. It's just a temporary political byproduct. Like a flat rock you step on in a swiftly moving stream, Obamacare is just a means to an end. Want to learn more about Obama's ultimate objective? Then you'll want to review our latest research presentation found on oclies.com. In it, a health expert and industry insider explains what you think you know about caring for your health is about to drastically change in 2014. Plus, he details the simple steps you could take to save thousands of dollars per year in health costs. It's free for you to preview at oclies.com. Don't waste time. What you don't know about the healthcare reform could hurt you and your family. When your accountant wants tax-free income, this is what he does. Accountants know the law. They also know that any American could legally get paid up to 3 times per month, 100% tax-free. That's 36 tax-free checks each year. It doesn't matter what you make already. This simple strategy could work for anyone. Go to www.irsrevenge2.com to learn how. That's irsrevenge2.com.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
And we are back on the Financial Survival Network with Bill Holter of Miles Franklin. So what they do is they use that as an entree into avoiding all the tariffs and duties that the country will have on imported goods to protect their home market. And they'll say, oh, we need all these computers to help with this project. And then they sell all those computers into the market there and avoid all those tariffs. So,
right.
They have their own hitmen.
And it's a display of good faith.
Yeah.
I mean, the Costa Rican people, I saw this firsthand, the Costa Rican people liked the Chinese because they were doing things that benefited them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So I guess it works out. But, yeah, we're seeing this whole thing just come and unravel now. And the money printing, man, looking at something from David Schechtman there, from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis and the money printing, man, the aggregate, the adjusted monetary base, it just straight up parabolic.
Straight up explosion.
Yeah.
There may be a chink in the armor here, though. This morning, and even CNBC talked about this morning, which is usually they're 2 days behind. But it was reported yesterday that there was $104 billion worth of treasuries last week, from Wednesday to Wednesday, that were sold by foreigners. Now, we didn't see a big spike in interest rates, but we have seen some pretty good weakness in the dollar this week, and I think that's where it showed up. If I had to guess, probably the Fed bought that $104 billion, kept it off the market.
Mm-hmm.
But then the trade had to be washed. In other words, whoever it was, and you've got to speculate it was the Chinese because they're the biggest holder, but whoever it was that sold, to terminate the trade, they sold dollars to get whatever other currency that they wanted. Right. I think that's where the weakness this week, where we blew through 80 to the downside at the end of last week, and I think we got down to 79.14 or something like that yesterday or the day before. So I think that's where that $104 billion sale of treasuries has shown up.
Yeah, we're at 79.42 right now, according to Kitco.com. And yeah, if it really gets going, maybe it's a shot across the bow. Maybe they're not ready to pull the plug on the dollar yet, but at some point they're going to pull the plug, right?
Maybe it's positioning for whatever U.S. sanctions we come up with after Sunday's vote. Crimea is more than likely going to vote to secede and become Russian, and you've got troops on the Ukraine border. If Putin moves in and we put sanctions, one of the threats by Russia is that they sell their $139 billion worth of treasuries. So it could be pre-positioning for whatever comes down this coming week.
Yeah. So, it's obvious that Obama being perceived as weak is going to do something stupid to prove that he's not weak, right?
The foreign policy is just, it's ridiculous. Our foreign policy for the last few years has been not even comedy.
Yeah.
And you got to look at it from the standpoint of foreigners. What will the U.S. do? Foreigners don't even know, because there's no clear signals as to whether we're going to support treaties, not support treaties. You have Israel and Saudi Arabia with the Syrian crisis back in November. The Saudi Arabians afterwards came out and said, we feel like we were stabbed in the back. And that's our biggest Arab ally. That's not a good thing.
Yeah. Now they're talking to the Chinese.
Exactly.
Right. So what's next? Mm-hmm.
There's no telling. And that's the point. There is no telling what's next with foreign policy, because there's no clear direction. When if you do business with somebody and they say they're going to do something and they don't do it, or they say they're not going to do something but they go ahead and do it, you kind of pull back and think twice and maybe not do business with them. And I think that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're a parent, Bill. If you keep telling your kids you're going to do something and you don't, or you lose credibility with them, and then they no longer trust you, and you have real problems on your hand with them. And that's what's happening with the U.S. at the worst possible moment in time, where we need to trust the most.
It's exactly the same as with kids. It's trust, credibility, and the rule of law.
Yep. Yeah, well, we have no rule of law.
Some real rules, and they're expected to abide by them, and you're truthful with them and expect them to be truthful with you. I mean, the family unit should be no different than how a government runs, but we know that's not the case.
Yeah, that we do, don't we? And hey, I don't want to get into like all the bankers that are kind of offing themselves or disappearing and all that, but it seems like a pattern, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and it's off. I mean, how does a banker commit suicide by nail gunning himself several times?
That guy I'm not sure about. He seems so inconsequential, apparently. We don't really know enough. We don't have enough facts on that guy's significance, but it seems like he was a hit.
Together,
yeah.
It's too much of a coincidence. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty entertaining there. I mean, obviously not for his family.
Now, I think.
Yeah.
There's 10 bankers that have died in the last 45 days.
Yeah, some of them definitely did themselves, and that was obvious. Like the guy who jumped in front of the train.
Why?
Why? There was a time where people said, if anything happens to me in the event of my untimely death, please release these documents. See to it that the authorities get them. But I guess that was only in the movies, Bill, you
could see something like that, couldn't you?
Yeah, like they'd be released to Zero Hedge, Snowden would get them, Glenn Greenwald, right? There are sources that you could get them to. Cheryl Atkinson. People would get these documents and make sure they saw the light of day, I would think.
Well, it's all about the truth, which kind of round trips back to what we started talking about in the first place, was the audio records from the Bank of England being destroyed. It's all about the truth. If the truth gets out, it's over.
Well, the truth is out, I think, but the receptivity of the minds out there, that's what's alarming there, Bill. People are just not receptive to the truth anymore.
Is the truth really out? How much gold is in Fort Knox? Does anybody know for a fact?
Well, in James Bond, it looked like it was all there in Goldfinger.
It was all tungsten.
And they were going to nuke it. I love that movie. Every time I get a chance to watch that movie, I watch it, But seriously, who the heck knows? And they're not telling us, but...
No, but there's got to be a reason, and it can't be because the quote markets are so bad, because they're not. Stocks are up. Interest rates have moved up just a little bit, but nothing's blown up there. They have everything in lockdown, so it can't be because these bankers. They can't be committing suicide because of huge personal losses.
Yeah, that is alarming. Yeah, that part. And when was the last time? 1950 something. 57, I think the year I was born, was the last time that they audited.
Yeah, I thought it was 1956, but I've read several places now that I was wrong. It was 1953.
53. Okay, so before I was born.
And that was during Eisenhower's administration.
Eisenhower.
Yep.
And okay, so you could say
Richard Nixon, vice president.
Yeah, that's reassuring, isn't it? He was reassured by that as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something wrong with that one, huh? So when are we going to find out? I mean, the gold in the Federal Reserve, definitely there. I'm convinced of that. Who owns it? That's a whole nother story that we're never going to know, although probably most of it is German, French, and a bunch of other foreign countries. So
you think the gold is actually there, but we're just not giving it back?
Yeah. The reason why, and let me tell you my thoughts on it, and have to make it fast because most of those
be too stupid.
Yeah, well, it's because most of the bars there are not London good for delivery bars. They're mostly old American bars, rectangular bars. On that note, we got to get going, but you can get Bill's excellent writings just by subscribing on the milesfranklin.com site. And, of course, just go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, get our free newsletter. Bill, thanks so much for coming on. It won't be as long again next time, I promise.
I enjoyed it. Thanks, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.